Gather round, dads, it's time for a tale. Hand me a book and a warm pint of ale. Let's discuss writing and the literary gods with Dan Roberts on the Dad Lit Pod.
Welcome to the Dadlit Pod, the literary podcast for people who are thinking about going east to grow their own food, like Austin Kennedy, who I'm chatting with tonight. Austin writes thrillers that blend high stakes suspense with deep emotional resonance. He creates the kind of stories readers find hard to put down and even harder to finish because the characters and world feel too alive to leave behind. His novel, A Bit of Shade, follows retired military intelligence veteran Mickey Torres, who's built a quiet life in the wilderness with his twins after losing his wife. A surveillance feed drags him back into betrayal, danger, and conspiracy, threatening a fractured near future America. Raised amid Arizona's vast deserts, Austin draws from those wide open spaces to shape vivid settings and grounded characters, a lifelong learner who thrives on genuine conversations about any topic. He channels that curiosity into tales that celebrate everyday courage, family bonds, and the quiet strength it takes to protect what matters. This is a very dad-lit description of you, Austin.
Well, yes. No, I mean that being, being a parent, I think I kind of discovered probably 19, 20 years old that I think that that's probably one of the most important things that you can do. And so since, that, young adult age, that's been one of the things that I've been trying to work towards. Yeah.
So is it just because I make it look so glamorous, or did you have a come to Jesus moment that convinced you that parenthood was a thing that you wanted to do?
Well, not to put your glamorousness aside, but no, a big part of it was, going through that sort of thing that I think a lot of men my age, like my generation for sure go through is like a lot of people are really lacking purpose and they're looking for that. And I
Yeah.
think as like the age where people become parents is getting later and later, I think a lot of men are struggling to find that until later, and some of them don't make it there because they have nothing important to focus on, or they're struggling to find what really drives them.
Hmm.
And so I think that's one of the most important things. And um,
What do you think it is? Because I think if we got a Gen Xer, for example, or like an elder millennial like myself, they would tell you that that sort of dicking off in your 20s is almost a tradition and a mark of pride. Why has that changed so much for young men? I assume you're in the later millennial to Zoomer
yeah,
range.
I'm like the older Zoomer, so I was
Yeah.
99, born in 99. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think the internet's changed a lot. And I mean, people definitely still mess around in their early ages and they get enjoyment out of it. But I think that like a lot of the stuff people my age do now is like, I don't know, you don't get as far in life. Like you can't mess up as much, maybe because of the internet
Mhm.
and like everything's forever. You don't want to end up in jail or get DUIs and stuff like that. And I think pre-internet, like if you really messed up.
Well, we were just we had a little interruption.
Yeah.
Um, but we were talking about this sort of idea of feelings of listlessness, particularly amongst the Zoomers. And I think you were suggesting that it's sort of tied to economic constraints, it's tied to social media, it's tied to the kind of nature of internet culture and that sort of thing. I have to say that's a bummer because obviously from the being in college and getting Facebook, we just didn't really care.
Yeah.
It's really unfortunate that
Yeah. And I mean,
it's got this
there,
bad.
yeah, there's definitely people who don't care, and it's
Yeah.
like a coin flip whether it ruins them
Yes.
or whether, it doesn't affect them at all. But
Or
um,
alternatively, it goes the Kim Kardashian way.
yeah,
And
yeah. But I think a lot of people are afraid, it's like, you sort of live with this little bit of fear that you might accidentally ruin your life. And it's like hardly even your fault. Or, maybe it
yeah.
is, but you're young and like people do make mistakes.
Yeah, I think that to that extent, the sort of digital footprint, you're definitely saying something that's very true. Because when I was a kid, uh, I knew all sorts of people who had sort of, people's parents and other people who had kind of, effed up in their 20s, and it didn't wholly define them the rest of their life. They continued on. But that was in the pre-internet age, before the sort of page six style shaming and the
Yeah.
cancel culture and all that other stuff, which is an interesting thing. It certainly points to, I can see where this sort of feeling of um, almost universal eyes on a generation would drive them slowly insane.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think that's one big part. I think the other big part is there's a lot of things, they talk a lot about like how social media affects young women. But there's a lot of things designed to affect young men too. Like,
Yeah.
the uh would be like gambling, um, and stuff like that. Like that's becoming
Yes.
the biggest addiction for Gen Z, and that's like financially tanking a lot of people that otherwise would be better
Well, I
off.
mean, beyond that, the way that video games
Yep.
changed to create wealth from like in-game
Yep.
purchases,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is so bizarre and has
Yeah.
continued to be such a bizarre thing, and something that
Yeah. And that's
I
that's
find
really
really,
what
really,
that,
really heinous.
yeah, that's really
Uh,
what moved me away from video games. That, and somebody told me it's like you can level up your character in a video game and you can level up yourself in real life. It's like what do you think is what do you think
yeah,
is gonna get you further? And
yes,
that's
yes.
yeah.
No, I think precisely. I think that that's certainly a thing that is of value. Oftentimes, and I think about this a lot. I think that the only limiting factor in your life, really and truly, is time.
Yep.
I mean, if you had all the time in the world, you could accomplish anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It's
it's a
the it's
matter
the
of
monkeys on a typewriter. If they haven't written the Bible, they haven't been writing long enough.
yes, that's the law of large numbers.
Yeah.
Though even in that case, Russ Roberts of Econ Talk likes to point out that he disagrees with that concept and suggests that the monkeys would have, pooped all over the room and been able to move any of that excrement
Yeah.
out of there in order to successfully type
That's how I
anything.
always think about like zombie apocalypse stuff. So I'm like, if you've got a gate or something like that and they're
Yeah,
killing zombies at the gate, eventually they're gonna stack up where they
yeah,
don't know what they're chasing behind the gate.
yes. Yeah, I think that's accurate.
Yeah.
Although the no one talks about lemmings anymore. Lemmings were
That's true.
always were always a popular way to sort of describe that of like following things off the cliff.
Yeah.
The irony, of course, is that looking back, it turns out that lemmings actually don't jump off cliffs. It was just the Walt Disney documentarians were throwing the lemmings off a cliff and
Yeah.
claiming that that was a thing that they do.
Yeah. I used to play the Lemmings video game when I was a little kid.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
So you know what I'm talking about. So is
Yeah.
this what inspired you to sit down and write a bit of shade? Was it personal leveling up or
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it. I think the other thing was just that I felt like I felt like the culture, especially in the US, wasn't really going in the right way. And then I kind of was like, well, I think it's important if you have a problem with the way the culture's going, you have to make culture that people will like and will draw people
Mhm,
in. And like I know that especially among my generation, like reading is sort of a lost art. Like anytime I
mhm.
talk to somebody about books, like they're like, "You're the most well-read person I've ever met." And it's like, and if I talk to somebody a little bit older that likes reading, it's like I'm not well read compared to them. And so it's kind of like a lost art, the reading aspect of stuff. And so um so mine was like, well, maybe you write a book that becomes a movie and that's how people find out about it. But I just think that I felt like there was a vacuum, like missing stories that needed to be told and or at least more of them.
Yeah, so what do you think is missing from the contemporary stuff that you read? Because you're probably one of the younger people I've ever had on the pod.
Yeah. So a lot of the stuff now is like it seems like a lot of the books were written solely for entertainment purposes.
Yeah.
So, and I don't, it's not like there's nothing wrong with that, but it's like, some of the books that I really like were like The Moon is a Harsh Mistress
Hmm.
and then like Master and Margarita, which is a book that not a lot of Americans have read, but it's just like they were written for a purpose. They have meaning, but even if you don't pay attention to like the moral of the story or whatever, like they're still good books, but they
Hmm.
have that kind of that gripping moral behind it. And when you write a book just for entertainment purposes, sometimes you miss out on that. Um,
So you're looking for books that have almost a deeper element of thought or a deeper exploration,
yeah,
basically.
yeah, I want there to be a storyline within the story
Hmm.
that people it's like the example I would use which I sort of you know I always try to aim towards is you want to feel bad when the story's over because you just want to know more, and that's where like with something like Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings where you have after the story's been written, the author has to go back and add more because people want more because there's too many unanswered questions and
Yeah.
you need more information about the world, what happened before and what's going to happen after. And so it's not only that, it's like you can't it can't just be surface level entertainment for people to want that more information. Like there has to be a deeper um a deeper question at hand that really draws
Hmm.
people in, even if they don't realize that it's there hidden within the story. Like it grips people still.
Hmm. So what are some, for example, some books that you've read recently that really engaged on this multi-front of being both engrossing and having this sort of level or this deeper meaning?
So one good book, which I know it's popular, but maybe not in the US because it's also not an American author, and I think it was probably originally written in Spanish, but like Blindness by uh, Jose Saramago.
Yeah,
I
what's
was a
that about? I've never read it.
so it's a really great story, and this is something that drove me to add more detail to the story because the idea behind the story is there's like a virus that starts and it causes everyone to go blind,
Hmm.
and eventually the whole world is blind, and it follows like the first people who went blind. So they put him in quarantine, and they're stuck in like this hospital or prison wing or whatever. And eventually they get out, but they're blind. They're trying to navigate through the city and try to find their way back home, even though, for the most part, none of them can see or can barely see. And that's like this thing where it's like you can think about it and think like, what's the hidden meaning or whatnot behind the story. But no matter what, if you read the book, you go, like this is intriguing, it's interesting. There's more to this than entertainment, and there's something beneath the surface. It's kind of like, there's a lot of books that have been produced in the last 10 years, but there's not a lot of books where you have deep literary analysis about it like you do with some of the older books.
Hmm.
Another one I went and revisited was I read The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged, which that one's like, Ayn Rand's not very good at disguising her her thoughts,
No.
but they were written with a purpose, and
Yes.
because she really wanted to get that in, that's why they're like 500 to 700 pages long.
Yeah, the speech is quite lengthy.
Yeah,
Yes. I think it's interesting because people tend to either really love Ayn Rand or hate Ayn Rand. And Ayn Rand is an interesting character because of course she was coming off the sort of philosophical reality of isms.
yeah,
And one of those isms had basically destroyed her entire life, right? She was
yeah,
had to flee the Bolshevik Revolution, which she, I think, spent the rest of her life trying to articulate the underlying philosophical error
yeah, yeah,
of that mode of thinking. At the same time, I think for a period she had a lot of influence on society
yeah. Certainly.
uh, and certainly was responsible for engaging with or inspiring some pretty revolutionary thinkers like Thomas Friedman. And to that extent, I always think it's worth reading it, even
Yeah,
if it is really long.
yeah. Well, and I think she's maybe falls into the, maybe uh like good message, wrong messenger kind of. And so it's like, if she took the message too far, that turned too many people off, and
Yeah.
and that kind of gets stuck. And then that, like I said, with the other book, The Master and Margarita, that's kind of on the other. I don't know if you've read that,
No, I've
but
never read that one.
okay,
What's
so
that
yeah, it's
about?
it's a it's a Russian novel, but it was written kind of with the intent to get past the censors of the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of interesting because I read that whole book and went, man, I really don't know what this is about. It's like relatively incoherent, and but I read it, and when I got to the end I was like, yeah, that was a really good book. I can't tell you why. Maybe somebody who lived during the time definitely could.
Yeah.
Uh, but it's like that's something that I think is you feel the message even if you don't understand it.
Yes.
And it's the same kind of like, in that circumstance, critiquing the Soviet Union, but you have a continuity between the two on the front end and on the back end of that, where
Hmm.
it's like, they're attacking ideas in a unique sort of way.
Yeah. So what inspired you to do a bit of shade?
So my big thing was, um
There's a homesteading element,
yeah,
clearly.
there's that, which that definitely goes to something that I'm personally interested in. But I think the big part of it was just as a young person looking out into the world and seeing like a big aspect is what could I see the future looking like? And that's
Hmm.
kind of what I designed the world around. And then also like if I tell the story right, maybe you can change some people's mind and we can avoid that future
Hmm.
um or the other big thing is it's all based around the Greek proverb, which is society grows great when men plant trees whose shade they shall never sit under, where it's
Hmm.
like there's going to be things in your life, decisions you make um, that aren't for you. They're for the future. They're for people you don't even know and aren't even related to. But
Hmm.
but sometimes doing the right thing echoes throughout time.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. It ultimately a great premise on which to base a thriller, particularly a dad-lit thriller featuring a main character who's a dad.
Yep.
And what is that part of the reason why you decided to make the main character a dad?
I think I mean I think it's part of it, but I think the other thing is obviously being a parent comes with a certain level of duty, and obviously
Yeah.
you can have duty without kids. I could write the story with him not being a parent, but but the ability to put him in a circumstance where somebody who doesn't want to be involved with the world at large is forced to
Hmm.
because of his children. Um, Gives it that element of one relatability for a lot of people, but
Hmm.
but the other thing is like that sense of duty really comes up, um,
Hmm.
even if he didn't have it for the world at large before.
Hmm. Why'd you choose the setting of South Carolina?
Because I wanted so, and that comes into the world building. I wanted to. The big thing is I knew it kind of had to take place in the South because
Hmm.
in the sort of world building I had America in sort of a second Civil War. It's not like super active, not really combat driven,
Hmm.
and and so I was thinking about where might the next like in industrial center be and and so I wanted to make in this sense as opposed to in the first Civil War the South is a little bit stronger. They've got the access to the port, they got the main ports, they have the ability to produce, they're not stuck by drought, and so and they have the ability to produce, they've got materials and kind of a different culture where the South has a more structured culture where like in the West, here in Arizona versus California, you have clashing cultures, and and then you might have similar culture in the Midwest or the northern Northwest kind of, but they're sparsely populated or
Hmm.
not as connected to the people around. So that's kind of why I went with that area, and I ended up having the South be like the new, I think described in the book, the new Silicon Valley sort of.
Hmm. The sort of concept, and this comes up a lot because a lot of men seem to write about this of the doom, as it were, this sort of idea of sort of collapse and going against the collapse. What do you think is driving that amongst men? Because it seems to go right across the board. I find older people who are writing about it, younger people who are writing about it. What is it with men and civilizational collapse?
So I think because maybe civilization is one of our greatest accomplishments, and men understand that that the collapse is the worst thing. It is the
Yeah,
worst thing that could happen, and that's what you want to protect the people you care about from.
yeah.
And and that's where, even the homesteading comes. Like that's you want to be self-reliant. So in the event of collapse, your family is safe. So I think that drives men a lot, and they understand the consequences and the stakes, and that is a thing that if you write the story right, you can inspire people.
Yeah. Um, Tell me about homesteading.
So yeah, so that's something, I'm doing my obviously I still live in the city, so I'm doing my best to learn about. I've got land out east, and probably in the next couple of months we'll be moving out there and starting that. But it's just something it's like, for the past maybe 10 years in Arizona, there's always been questions about like, are we going to run out of water the more people that live here? And
Mhm.
so that's been one thing, and then I've got a bunch of, health issues that I think were exacerbated by, living in a city, pollution, low quality food. And so, that's, like I said, something I want to take in my hands so I can make a better life for me and my family. It might be harder, but it's kind of worth it. And that's what, I think you like culturally there is a big push towards that for a lot of people. And I think probably COVID drove a lot of that because people saw how kind of fragile the supply chain was, and and how they didn't necessarily want to live in a city where there'd be more restriction on what they can and can't do. Um, but it's also like sort of the thing that built our culture here in America to begin with is people had to do a lot on their own before there was good division of labor and super strong uh, countrywide market and whatnot.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because you we talked about at the beginning of the podcast this sort of concept of feeling kind of listless or feeling sort of purposeless, particularly for young men. Um, and watching it, you see sort of like three trajectories. There's like indulgence, and then there's romantic perceptions, and then the sort of alternative, which is sort of despair.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that it's being experienced along such wide boundaries, and the responses to it are things like homesteading, I
Yeah.
think,
Yeah.
and this sort of like or van life, for example.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
like um, sort of like if you're already living in a space the size of a van, why not have a nice view?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or, why not have the element of the open road and the romance of almost pioneering? I would say I would describe the van life movement as digital pioneering, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the literally the wagons heading west. But in this case, the the wagons are digital, right?
Yeah.
They're it's people who are selling something that requires them to physically go there, but the sale is being in the digital space.
Well, and it's versatile too because I mean that is one benefit to van life is if you want to go live in the middle of nowhere for a month, you can do that. If you want to be in the city the next month, you can do that. It's like
Yep.
you kind of you kind of have the opportunity to unplug or plug back in,
Hmm.
and then yeah, like you said, it's you get the scenery
Yeah, the
view.
scenery. Um, but at the same time, um this sort of I mean, it comes to mind for me all the time when I think about artistry and architecture, for example. and the way that everything looks the same now.
Yeah.
There's sort of a ubiquity in our culture. Obviously the result of mass market,
Yeah.
um, sort of bereft of meaning almost. Like you can literally you're importing the steel glass structure, um,
Brutalist
the
boxes.
brutalist boxes. God, I hate brutalism. And 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 then you think to like, the 1950s and the 1960s and the Malvina Reynolds little boxes critique. And to be perfectly honest, those little boxes almost have more humanity and soul than even the most pristine or well put together brutalist structures.
Yeah.
I don't know why someone thought that imposing concrete will, which now we simply use as settings for post-apocalyptic nightmare societies.
Yeah. So I used to get when I
Makes
was a
me laugh.
teenager. When I was a
Yeah,
teenager, I worked at a paint store,
yeah.
and I would get disgusted by people because everybody wanted the same color. Like, and they're like, "Well, what's the most popular color so far this year?"
Yes.
Or, "Am I allowed to paint my ceiling a different color other than white?" And it's like
Yeah.
I'm constantly telling people it's like it's your house. You do what you want. If it doesn't look good, it's paint. You can repaint it.
Yes.
And it's just that and like for some reason people don't want to hear that.
Yes. Well, now that we're talking about forging your own way, what is the architectural plan for this land that you are
S- s-
planning to settle on
So
and
yeah,
do something?
I'm working on that. It's just it comes down to so much with materials and stuff, and I really got to work on that more. Um, probably I'll end up renting something nearby or whatnot, and then working on it. But um, I've got some friends in the area, and so I've looked at I've thought a lot about like having the Amish people, having them build.
So basically do it as like a barn structure
Sort
that's
of, yeah. But that's not, it's not the only option. So, um,
hmm
I originally I was like, well, I'll just do it all myself. Get a trailer and live in the trailer and then build it all. But it's gonna be it'll be a process. So,
hmm
um, so we'll work on it. But yeah, I know I want to do something different and unique, which means I got to be a really successful writer so I can afford it.
I wish I could I wish I could say even if you were a successful writer, you could afford
Yeah, that's true.
it. So what's next on the docket? What do you
So I've
when you're done building your house?
so
Uh
I've got two books that I'm working on. One of them I've got to stop and come back to it later. It's gonna have to wait because it's like it's an I don't it's hard for me to write because it is a purely entertainment story and I need to fix it because it needs to be more than
yeah.
that. And so that one is about a serial killer who's right who the what you're reading is their journal. So
Yeah.
they're not admitting to anything and they're being vague, but they're telling the story from their perspective.
hmm
And and then the one that I am starting to get into is sort of it is really at heart like sort of an anti-war novel.
hmm
And it's about a mother who loses her daughter and her husband, and she's kind of part of the ruling family of the country. And she, what starts as her drive for revenge kind of puts her on a path of just realizing how awful the whole situation is and trying to figure out how she can how she can use her influence to end it.
Well, that's interesting. Well, do you want to plug do you want to plug your book and a bit of shade and make
Yeah.
some money to build this house?
Yeah. No, yeah, of course. So yeah, my novel is A Bit of Shade, uh,
Self-published.
self-published. You can find it on Amazon exclusively for now.
Yes.
But it's about, it's about a father and he's faced with an impossible choice and he's got to do what he can to make sure that the future is worth living in for his children.
Well, it's classic dad lit story if I've ever
Yes, it
heard
is.
one.
It is.
It's a
And the
classic dad
next
lit
one will be
story.
mom lit.
And the next one will
So,
be mom lit.
yeah.
So other than that, are you working on any other writing projects, any short stories or anything like that?
Not too much. I did work on a short story. I didn't do much with it, but the premise was basically like a stressed mom. It was kind of like a horror story where a stressed mom starts taking a supplement that turns her into a literal monster at night, and and she scares her kids. But I haven't done much with that either. So uh,
Well, I'd love to read that one when you're
yeah,
done with it.
the only yeah. So. Um, yeah, I gotta, I've recently transitioned in my regular job, so new routine and then working on moving, and so it's like I don't have enough time to write, and I need to get back to it and find that time.
Yeah, what's the best method you've found to having now sat down and written a novel and working on two others?
Yeah, it's they're always hard to start, but once you get into them, you can get rolling. And I mean, the one thing that helps me a lot is I think about it even when I'm doing other stuff, and so just like writing down my notes, um, and keeping them at hand, and then when you're actually like getting into the writing. Usually it's easier. I mean, you could set like a time, right? I'm going to write for 20 minutes or
Mhm.
30 minutes a day. I usually would do pages. So I would try to write a certain amount of pages every day or at least every other day. And I was actually, I was able to write the book in a relatively short period, but then, getting it edited and formatted and all that stuff ended up taking a long time. And then I was sitting on it for a while before publishing it, trying to find like a literary agent or whatnot. But the big thing is just you keep working at it, and the thing people would always ask me while I was working at it, I was like, well, what if it's not successful? It's like, well, then you write another book, and
Yeah, you
if
write
that one's
another
not
one.
successful, then you write another book, and if maybe it's not for you or whatever, then you still did something that most people never do. And if it is
Yeah, if
successful, then your earlier books will get attention when you uh when you make it.
yeah, so if you learned anything about yourself in writing a novel, what is that?
I think it's where when I started writing to when I finished writing, I went under a big change because like um the my love for work and working changed dramatically. So when I first started writing, it was, everything was just a job, and after writing the book, it's like my outlook on work itself uh and how much effort to put into things was magnified. And so, I'm able to find things that I can put my energy into that's fulfilling for me and stick with it. And when I was younger and tried to write, like I never thought I'd be able to do that. But
Hmm.
once you go through the process, like you learn those skills and it also helps like other people. There's plenty of people that want to write and they kind of run into the same things. And so like kind of having that done, you can help guide people too.
Well, Austin, it was great chatting with you. Thank you for coming on the Dadlet Pod
Of
and
course.
go out and check out Austin's book, A Bit of Shade.
Thank you, and thank you for
A
having me.
a near apocalyptic thriller.
Indeed.
The heck you, Austin.
Uh, no,
Our time together has come to an end. It's time to return to your wife, kids, and friends. It's time to pick up those books you forgot while you wait for the next Dad Lit Pod.